Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. Assuming your adult child is estranged because of something he's upset about, and not just because he needs some space from mom or dad right now, the origins of what's happening now are most likely older than the estrangement itself. The origins of any estrangement are almost always older than the behavior of estrangement. Your child probably did not just decide one day suddenly to cut you off. There's always a run-up to the first act of estrangement, whether the estrangee is aware of it or not. Most of the parents who consult with me about their adult children's estrangement are aware of things that happened in the past that upset the child, and there's often a sense of despair because, despite any regrets the parent might have, they can't go back and do things differently. Well, I have very good news for you today, and that is, it doesn't matter that you can't change what happened. You can still have an influence on fixing whatever damage might have been done. Whether it was personality clashes, garden variety parenting mistakes, or downright abuse that happened in your home, what happened is over. And what's left of it is now in the present day. But that's where you live. You can have an impact today. You don't have to change the past to be a healing force in your child's life and to work on healing the estrangement today. Yes, even if she isn't talking to you at all right now, you can still put all the pieces in place for reconciliation because, believe me, those pieces don't fall into place by themselves. Not if you want permanent reconciliation. There's usually plenty of work to do before that can happen. While it's true that you can't go back and keep your child from getting hurt or feeling unhappy, the hurt and unhappiness that occurred back then are not what's keeping your child estranged today. The hurt and unhappiness that your child experienced in the past are not the reason she's estranged in the present. The reasons for today's estrangement exist in the present, where, fortunately, you have plenty of power to address them. Let me give you an example to illustrate what I mean by this. Let's say that you borrowed something from your neighbor quite a while ago and you forgot to give it back. And while you were away from home on an extended trip for several weeks, your neighbor needed that thing. And he came over and he tried knocking on your door because he needed it right away. But because you weren't home and the thing was locked in your house, your neighbor had to go and just buy a new one because he really needed it before you got back. You might feel really bad about what happened, even though it was an honest mistake on your part. You simply forgot that you had your neighbor's thing. So what can you do? You can't change the past. Well, what if you started by apologizing to your neighbor for not returning the item promptly and for his inconvenience at not being able to get to it when he needed it? That's a good start. But you might also want to reimburse him for the new thing that he had to buy. Because after all, he wouldn't have had to buy a second one if you'd returned the first one in a timely manner. And if you really wanted your neighbor to know how much you regretted the incident, you might even throw in some flowers or a bottle of wine. How do you imagine your efforts might go over? If you're not sure, put yourself in the neighbor's place. As the neighbor who lent out your thing, you might have been very annoyed to discover that your thing was locked up in your neighbor's place when you needed it. But what if, after they came back, They made it as right as they could, with a sincere apology, a reimbursement for what you had to spend, and a token of goodwill. How much does it matter now that the past can't be changed? You and your neighbor succeeded in fixing what was damaged between you by one of you understanding the trouble they unwittingly caused the other and making it right, not in the past, but in the present. That's all that's ever required in relationships. We can never change the past. So we need to listen to each other's pain about the past in the present. And that is where we can choose to respond with compassion and humility to try to give the other person what they need. If you have not fully accepted your child's perspective on his own childhood, you may be putting up a barrier between the two of you today. If today you accept your child's version of his experience in the past, and if today you can provide understanding, compassion, and remorse if appropriate, then today you can heal what was damaged or broken in the past. To be realistic about this, it is your child's job, now that she's an adult, to work through what happened in her childhood. But you can help by providing validation, support, empathy, and appropriate remorse. You can help her by not denying, debating, or dismissing your child's perceptions. If you want to heal your relationship as well as put the past to rest, you'll want to be a part of your child's healing, not stand in the way of it with defensiveness or helpless despair. Here are just a few ways that parents unwittingly keep a troubled past alive in the present. Number 1, a lack of apology. I think of apologies as a relationship repair tool. I've talked about them on this podcast and also in my book, which is called Reconnecting with Your Estranged Adult Child. Failing to apologize helps to keep a troubled past alive in the present. Number 2, ineffective apologies. Many parents are perfectly ready and willing to apologize to their children for certain things, but tragically, no one ever taught them the difference between a good apology and a bad one. So apologies from parents sometimes do more harm than good. And whatever it was from the past that might have started to heal with a good apology from the parent doesn't get that chance to heal. The third way parents fail to heal the past in the present is they refuse to accept their child's reasons for the estrangement. If you don't really get or accept what led your child to distance herself, you're doomed to keep repeating whatever the problem is. So let me turn those 3 don'ts into do's so that you have something to take away from this episode. Number 1, apologize freely and often if your child is upset about the past. Number 2, educate yourself about what makes an apology effective and what doesn't. Never say, "I'm sorry you feel that way," for example. And lastly, when it comes to your child's reasons for estrangement that do lie in the past, seek first to understand, not to defend yourself against your child's point of view. The Reconnection Club offers plenty of support for following those guidelines, and if you can follow them, you will never have to worry that you can't change the past. Instead, you'll resolve to make your mark in the present, where the estrangement is happening, and where you still have all the power of a parent to influence your relationship with your child. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.